Alright, what's up everybody? Thanks for stopping by, checking out the channel, checking out this video. So today I'm going to talk about another game that I finished. I know. But Bobby, didn't you already beat a game this year? Don't worry guys, I'm not going to make a habit out of this, but this is one I definitely want to talk about. And it is, let me get it in camera, Road 96. So I'm going to come from the standpoint that you haven't played this game and you don't know much about it. So I'm going to kind of just explain what the game is first and then get into my thoughts. Uh, it is a very unique game. I don't even know how to categorize it. I would say it's almost like a visual novel, except there's a lot of times you spend just as much time reading and talking to people as you do moving around and performing actions. So it doesn't really fit into that category, but it's not a walking simulator. It's not an action game. It's just kind of its own thing, I think, which is pretty awesome. So what you do is you just pick a random teenager at the beginning of the game, and you're trying to take different roads or ways to get to Road 96, which goes north to get you out of the country. In this game, you are in a authoritarian country where the president is there. You know, there's a lot of propaganda, and the president's not liked. So these teenagers are trying to get away. What's interesting though is the teenagers really don't matter, and they're not real characters in the game. What they do is they kind of serve as a vessel for you to meet the characters that actually do matter, that have stories that unravel, and you complete more and more of their stories playing as different teenagers, which sounds kind of weird. Let me try to get into it a little more. So you pick a teen, and you have to make decisions on how to get north, to get to the border, to try to cross it. Based on what decisions you make, or who you talk to and things you say to them, you have different options to go north. Some of the characters in the game will actually give you rides along the way. Some of them you interact with at different locations, albeit gas stations or kind of like these rundown camper sites. A few others throughout the game. And depending on how you interact with them, I think will change how much of their story will become uncovered during that run. And ultimately, what happens with each teenager is you will either get to the border and cross it, get stopped at the border, in which case your that run is over, or sometimes your character doesn't even make it to the border, which happened to me plenty of times. Meaning your character gets killed. You can die a lot in this game. Not to spoil, I won't say the exact circumstances, but one of the decisions I made for one of the characters, I made the choice, and all of a sudden I got shot in the face and I died. And it takes you to the like in blurb, and then you go back to the beginning and you pick another random teenager to start their journey, and it'll be a slightly different path. Some of the characters won't be available in that path, but others will. So I think that there's actually a not a set number of different teenagers you play as. I think it depends on uh, your decisions, how far you progress the story for each of the actual characters, and then I think it also might depend on how many you get across the border. All I'll say is that I only played until I actually got the end story, so I'm sure I didn't do everything in the game at all. I don't even know how long that would take, but I just wanted to get through and actually finish it and see the end stuff. So speaking of which, that's another cool thing about the game is that it isn't very long, even though I just said I don't know how long it would take to beat the whole thing. Each run for the character, even as some successful runs I had, getting the character all the way to and successfully across the border, only took 30 to 40 minutes. Some of them were longer, and some of the longer ones I didn't even make it. So I think it all depends on what you do, which I think is really cool. So that's kind of how the game is set up. Just before I get into, yeah, let's just go into some of my thoughts. I'm going to start off with the things I didn't like about it, or things I don't think worked as well first, just to get those out of the way. Um, Number one is that, and this is going to sound really bad, but guys, it's really not, is that the game doesn't handle very well when you're controlling the characters. Walking around is okay, but there's a lot of times where you have to look around or perform like mini games throughout the course of the game, and there's actually quite a variety of mini games, and just the controls don't handle very well. I played it on the Switch. Obviously, I showed the case before. And I did play the majority of this game in handheld, so maybe it is the Joy-Cons because I'm not a big Joy-Con fan, but it just didn't. A lot of the mini games were harder because of the controls, not because of what the mini game was. So that was definitely a negative. But the game was so good that that actually didn't bother me that much. I think some people will be turned. They'll get to a point and they'll be like, "Why is this not working right?" But really, it's the controls are kind of a minor detail. That's not the focus of the game. You can even I never failed a mini game. It's just they're just not as smooth as you'd want them to be. But I do want to bring it up because I think it is just an indie studio that made this. So I think the expectations have to be slightly different. But yeah, I would have liked the controls to be a little better. The other negative to me, and this one is I think more impactful on the game, and something that if they ever made another game in this style, is that I would love to see them work on first, is that, being a smaller studio and I'm sure a very limited budget, the graphics aren't great in the game. I think the game looks good overall when you're traveling around and the environments look good. Like they have a unique art style to them. But something that's super important in this game is interacting with the other characters, the NPCs in the game, especially the ones that have a story that you're trying to progress. And it's a lot of times it's really hard to kind of tell what's going on with them based on their facial expressions. And what I mean is, you'll be talking to someone, and the conversation might be going good or bad, but they have a very like stoic blink look on their face, and just like they'll just blink their eyes, like they don't have a lot of facial expression, which I totally understand given the nature of the game we're talking about here. But I think it could have a much bigger impact on the story if you could kind of read from the character, their face, or maybe if they were able to do more expressive body motions, kind of telling where they're at or kind of nudge you in the right direction what you're supposed to choose. Um, that being said, the voice acting was great. I loved the voice acting, and that definitely helps you a little bit. But I think they could do a better job with or I hope they could put a bigger budget into more animated facial expressions. I think that would go a long ways in the game. Those are really kind of the negatives for me. The positives just far, far outweigh the negatives, and which is really what makes this a special game. And kind of it all boils down to the environment, the way this game makes you feel. This is a game that, even though it's a small indie game, I thought about when I was not playing the game. I was thinking about the game, like, oh, what if I would have done this instead in the last run, or if I get in a similar situation the next time I play, like, what can I do differently? And I think that goes to show how impactful of a game it is that if it gets you to think about it in that way, which is not something I do with a lot of video games. When I'm playing a game, I'm always thinking about it, but to think about it outside of the game, I think that means a lot. And in addition to that, to me, the coolest thing about this game when you're playing it is that you never feel comfortable. The game really immerses you, makes you feel like you're that team. Like your decisions matter. If you don't make the right decisions, you could die, or it could set you back. It could prevent you from making it to this border and crossing what you just really want to do when you're playing it. They just do a phenomenal job at creating that sense of urgency, but more so that sense of unease that you're just always on edge a little bit. Like you gotta pay attention to focus on what you're doing because you don't want to make a mistake. And I thought that was pretty cool. That was pretty amazing that they were able to do that with such a small indie game like this. Just really made me, appreciate it for what it is. Anything else I should mention? I did mention the mini games. There's also like some abilities like lock picking and stuff you can pick up from other characters and carry them on to other teenagers. Which even though that's not the same person, it doesn't really matter. It's interesting to if you make right choices, you can pick up some of these abilities and use them later on to make your runs easier. Were all those things as necessary? I don't think so, but it did add another level. Like, hey, you want to do the best you can on every run so that they get easier in a way. I will mention that, for being a smaller indie game, and the things I mentioned that weren't, you know, 100% for this one, some of the other areas they did phenomenal in. The voice acting was great. All the characters, some of them even you just hate them, but you're supposed to, and they do a great job at that. The sound effects, whoever was in charge of the sound, deserved to win some kind of indie award for that.
Hell yeah! This here's some of Rock's tastiest cream!
Just the background ambient music just added to the feel the whole time. It totally set the mood and it put you in the right headspace. I really think they did a phenomenal job with this game. Even the negatives, they weren't detractors from the game to the point where you shouldn't play it or give it a chance. It was just all around really, really well done. A game I highly, highly recommend. Like honestly, it's a game that everybody should try, because if you don't like it, you're not investing a huge amount of time into it. Even if you do like one or two runs and you're like, it's just not for me. I totally get that. No matter how much a game is, somebody likes it or not, another person could hate it just as much, which totally makes sense, and that's just the way things are going to go. But this is one everyone should try. That being said, if you can't find it physical, because I don't know how readily available it is, even if you can find this one digitally, and for me, this is one of the highest praises I can give a game, is if I recommend it digitally. If you find this digitally, I didn't check the eShop or digital storefront anywhere else, but even if this is digital and it's only a couple dollars, guys, I could not recommend it enough. Trying it out, supporting the developers at all, because I don't know if they did any other games or if this is their first one. I didn't research it at all. I'm not gonna lie, but oh my god, they deserve to make enough money to make more games, because they did a really great job. I was just really invested in this one. So guys, that's kind of gonna be it. I'm sure I forgot to mention some stuff, but this really is a special game. So I highly recommend Road 96. If you guys haven't played it before or haven't heard of it, please check it out. Anyways, that'll do it for me for this one. I will see you guys on the next video. Have a good day.